Hello, guys. I wanted to talk to you about one aspect that has been popping up into my head by a different post that I have seen, and sort of like my opinion on why females should be financially literate. So first of all, I wanted to talk about what is financial literacy, what is actually financial independence, and how females are unequal in that sense with their male counterparts. And then some of the horror stories that I wanted to share. I'll try to keep them short. I actually recorded this video a little bit earlier and it ended up to be a 50-minute long story. But as some very wise dictator once said, statistics are just numbers, and story of one person is what actually inspires people. So the financial literacy is the possession of a set of skills and knowledge that allows an individual to make informed and effective decisions with all of their financial resources. And one of the things that females are lacking is this financial literacy, because as little girls, we are being told that somebody else is going to be taking care of us. The goal in our life is to find a partner who's going to be taking care of us. All the subculture is kind of feeding us this picture of Prince Charming coming and swooping us, and all that we have to do is sort of to just be pretty and don't bother our beautiful head with the problems of the financial market. So basically, as a result of that, many females are maybe very aware about sales and pricing and budgeting their own money, but they don't know what to do in order to manage the money that they save, or how to multiply this money. This is financial independence. So the official definition is that it is the status of having enough money to pay one's living expenses for the rest of one's life without having to be employed or dependent on others. And the income that is earned without having to work a job is commonly referred as a passive income. The financial independence retire early community is seeing it like that, that there is some eternal goal in a couple of years in the future where you will have enough assets that you can live off. This is basically what the retirement is. You achieve certain monetary status in your life, and you live off of those assets that you've accumulated during your life. But the way that I think my mother has also been approaching her life, we have been looking at financial independence as making this kind of 5-year plans into the future. So we always made sure that if the colloquial shit hits the fan, there was enough of assets that would allow us to go on for another 5 years. And this is something, or the way that I keep thinking about my assets, about my investments, and about money saving, assuring my job contracts, and so on, so that I give myself the 5 years during which I have at least minimal amount of money of which I can live, and this should give me an ability to recoup in case of emergency, change the occupation, or find some other way, or I don't know, if there would be some kind of disease happening, then I can kind of chill out and relax a little bit more. Because at the top of my head, I have all kind of stories that I have seen and lived through, and I know that going out of a trauma with having this kind of burden on top of you that you don't have money and you're desperate is actually something that's very destructive. So throughout my whole life, I have been trying to plan my career, my life, my asset allocation so that I have at least 4 to 5 years figured out of how things are going to play out in the best kind of scenario or in the worst kind of scenario. And we're having some strange stories about my parents, family, neighbors, and friends, and myself, and I could go into detail on those. They're very traumatic in a way. But the fact is, like, my parents, something that actually spiked me to disbelief in the institution of marriage and being kind of against this is the fact of seeing that after the divorce, my parents were still put by a judge to live in the same apartment, and actually because of the fact that my father continued to get into debt, the debt collectors kept going into our flat, and sort of the debt started to accumulate, for example, in my name as the next of kin. And the one thing that my mom wasn't able to do was to kick my father out because he was a co-owner of the flat. And I know that maybe this is some exceptional thing that happened in Poland in the 90s, but there are situations like that where you find yourself legally trapped, not being able to find yourself a separate flat, and you have to live with a person that is, I don't know, a threat for you, both in terms of violence or monetary. The thing is that we are not being taught how to choose our partners. We are being fed this kind of idea that, oh, it's love at first sight and you go into it and have babies. But actually it is very important to teach our children how to choose a partner that has similar monetary policies and the same politics about using the money, saving the money, and actually towards your family. Other stories included my family. One of my cousins ended up during the divorce with a debt of millions of zlotys, while her husband has been saving his assets in the name of his sister and his mother. And then after the divorce, my cousin was left with the debt collector on her salary for the rest of her life, while her ex-husband cashed out the assets from the name of his family and bought himself a hotel and started a new perfect life with a new younger woman, and lived happily ever after, I think. Well, not necessarily, he died apparently last year. But anyway, my neighbors, there has been lots of stories, but I think one that has hit me emotionally the most was a story in which one of my neighbors has been living bigamist life, and it turned out that he has had secondary family on the side with a woman who was pregnant, and eventually he left my neighbor and the kids. And that neighbor of ours has been a stay-at-home mom, so she didn't have any income. Eventually she did find the income for herself, but also it turned out that she has this genetic disease that has caused her to eventually die, but she needed to be dependent on her ex for money for the rest of her life. And those are the kind of situations where you realize that well, yeah, you have to think about it for yourself morally. Would you be okay with asking your ex for help for the rest of your life because you're sick? Or would you be proud enough? Would you prefer to be proud enough to have your own assets and to actually detach yourself from somebody who has maybe emotionally scarred you? That's up to you. Some of my friends, I know one of them has been kicked out by her husband from the home with a little baby in her hand, just in a pajama, and then ended up having to leave, again, sharing a room with her brother, and then asking people for help all the time. This is not a situation that you want to find yourself. This is not a situation that we're going to find ourselves watching in a Cinderella or any other Snow White kind of story. Actually, the Elsa from Frozen is very much discussing this issue. And myself, I think I was the victim of this thinking that when you enter a relationship, everything is going to just fall into place and everybody's working towards the same goal. But I ended up having a relationship with a person who refused to work and to contribute to the household, and the burden was on me. And then certain abusive relations inside of our relations started to happen. And if I didn't have the backup of the money, of my own assets, I know that I would be trapped in this relationship, depending on this person helping me out. But because I've built my asset, at least to the point where I was just able to say, okay, we cut it out, I go, I have place to be, you live your life, and we continue. This gave me the power to decide whether I want to be in an abusive relationship or not. And I think it's very important for females to have that option in their life. It's really powerful feeling when you can decide what is it that you accept as a response to you and what is that you do not accept as a response to you. So, so yeah, just we should be literate about our finances because of our children, because of the possibility of a divorce. There's a 50% chance of a divorce the first time round and 68% second time round, and average lasting of a marriage is about 2 years. And you can end up with debts, gambling debts. You can end up with somebody who turns out to be an alcoholic, substance abuser. And there are things that we cannot control in life. But unfortunately, as females who, for example, decide to have a child with such a person who then turns out to be somebody else, we are being punished because we are left, for most of the time, I think 70%, over 70% of single parent household have a mother as a provider. So in that sense, we are left with a bill to pay. And having actually assets and ability to do that, to be independent and in a better position, is something that we should be teaching our children, especially girls. And I think that hopefully that this kind of short review helps you to understand why I'm so passionate and why I would like to continue this account and my Instagram account to promote for females to explore more. And I think one last comment from a date that I was on, and I remember I asked this guy, what is his hobby? And he said, well, it's investing. And at that time, I didn't know how to set up those investing accounts in Finland. There was no English instruction or anything like that. And I wasn't that familiar with Finnish. So I asked him, could he talk to me about it or explain to me some things? And even though he knew I have a PhD, he said, oh, you wouldn't understand it, so maybe let's not bother. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how females are being treated, as those flimsy things that shouldn't bother with investing. So let's change it. Let's spread the word. Let's talk to our girls, daughters, friends. Let's just make it actually important. Okay, have fun, and I hope you enjoyed this shorter video. And drop a like, subscribe, and of course share your comments. Like, have you had any traumas in your near family or friend circle that has actually pushed you to think about how to manage your finances? Bye bye.